What's up, my beautiful people? So, I already know what you're going to say. TCM, you're blonde. Well, if you've been living under a rock, I promise to dye my hair pink for any donations. If we got $10,000 in donations for our charity stream, guess what? We hit $10,000. First step is a bleach. Second step is hair dye. So, stay tuned for our pink TCM coming up. Thank you so much for everybody who has donated and contributed to the stream. And thanks everybody for making VerseCon a success as well. We've raised quite a bit of money. We're well over $40,000 at this point for LLS, aka the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society. If you're interested in donating, we're taking donations through the end of the month, so just check down below in the description. So today we were actually doing a live stream over on Twitch. And if you're not following me on Twitch, don't know what you're doing, I'm going to go ahead and just cut over to the screen here. So if you're not following me on Twitch, come follow me on Twitch at twitch.tv/thecybermentor. And also, if you like this video, please do hit like, subscribe, comment down below. But anyway, so there's this new labs that are out that are called the CyberSecLabs. They're trying to compete with Hack the Box and Try Hack Me, same kind of platform. I went ahead and signed up for these labs. They were $10 or 10 pounds, I do believe, so around 13 bucks. I ended up going through all the labs during the live stream except one. One we did today on live stream and figured it out, and I really, really liked it. I liked it so much that I want to make a video about it. But this platform so far has been great. It's very, very beginner related. So you have the beginner labs, and then which we did over the weekend, and then we've got the community labs, which is the one I worked on today. So we worked on this Windows box called Secret. Apparently, I talked to the creator. There are more labs coming and more user-based labs for the community. So I'm excited to see where this platform goes. I am not a paid sponsor or anything for this platform. I get no money out of this. I'm just excited to see other websites out there that are doing these sorts of things and that I can kind of point people to depending on their level of difficulty. So let's look at this box called Secret. And I'm going to walk you guys through it step by step and almost like a kind of explain like I'm five type deal. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at it. And for Secret, I already did the Nmap scan. If you want to follow along, if you got a subscription, go ahead and pause the video, boot up the box, get your Nmap going. But for me, you can see here that I've got Nmap, and then I did a T4, all ports, and I usually do a -A, but I went ahead and just left this out for the video purpose. And then we've got the IP address. So if you're new to Nmapping, T4 is your speed. You have between 1 and 5. I told it, hey, go a little bit faster. And on the -P-, Nmap by default scans ports, only the top 1,000. So I said, hey, make sure you scan all 65,535 ports. So it went out there, did all the port scan, and we got this monstrosity back, right? We've got all these ports. And while this looks overwhelming, it really isn't. So there's a lot of indicators as to what this is. I don't have to run any sort of -O for operating system or even a -A to tell you what I think I'm looking at. So as you can see, we've got DNS open on 53. All right, we've got 88 for Kerberos. So Kerberos is the authentication method for Windows domains. We've got LDAP on 389 and LDAP-S on 636. So we're seeing a lot of things here that are telling me, hey, this is probably a domain controller. This is probably running some sort of Windows server operating system, and we're definitely up against a Windows machine. Now, I want to take what I think will be the easiest route here. We see some things. We see like 3389's open, and we see port 139's open and 445. So we can go try to enumerate SMB. We see RPC open as well. We see the WinRM port of 5985 open. So that's important to remember later on. But let's go ahead and just take a look at my first hunch. So the hunch was, what's going on 445? Well, I can use a tool called SMB client and do a -L like this. And then I'll just give it 4 backticks, and we'll go, I guess it's not really backtick, /. We'll do the 172.31.2.1. And this -L is going to say, hey, I want to connect to SMB and I want to list out all the shares. So go ahead and list those shares out for me. It's going to ask us for a password. And on that password, I'm just going to say no password. Go ahead and just list everything you got. Well, you can see here that it's listing everything. It didn't require a password, so anonymous login here is working. Now we can try to connect to some of these shares. We can say, hey, like, I want to see what's on the admin share. And if I connected to the admin share right away, that would be very surprising. But you can see here access is denied. So what I know from experience is the admin is common, C is common, IPC is common. If we can connect to admin or C, that's pretty good. IPC, not so much. Net logon and sysvol, possibly good for us to connect to. And those are kind of common when we talk about domain controllers, especially when we talk about sysvol. If you've never heard of the GPP or the group policy preferences or that exploit, the C password exploit, those are on older domain controllers or older Windows servers environments before it was patched. So maybe like 2008 or 2012. So not without knowing what we're up against exactly, which I'll give you a hint. We're actually up against Windows Server 2019. And I know that because the last time I did this, I actually ran this with the -A. I didn't run the -A to get all the information this time, only because it was taking so long. So we know we're up against 2019 if we did a full scan, and likely that there's not going to be a GPP issue here, although maybe somebody can go back in and just do it for the sake of doing it. But the one thing that stands out to me is Office Share. Office Share is one I would never see normally, right? We could see it if we're in an office environment and maybe we have credentials and we have access, but anonymous access to an Office Share, that's just not common. So that stands out immediately. So maybe what I want to do is I want to try to connect to that and say Office Share and see what's in there. And then no password. And then look at that. We got a connection. So we can just do an ls to see what files are there. And the names on these are actually pretty funny. We've got Bend Over, Joe Cakes, Kirby Curtis, Lee Frank, and Template. Now, there are a lot of files to go through. We could actually like CD into Bend Over, and we can CD into Joe Cakes and go one by one and look through all the folders. That takes a lot of work. I have a better way of doing this, or the way that I like to do this, which I just like to go grab all the files. So what I do to do that is I turn prompt off. I say, hey, prompt, let's turn you off. What that means is when we actually try to download these files, it's going to say, hey, do you want to download this file? And it's going to say yes, 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 over and over. So you just want to turn the prompt off. It's just going to automatically say yes for you. The other thing you're going to want to do is turn recurse on, meaning I want to download not only what's in this folder, but what's in the subfolders to those as well. And lastly, the command that we're going to run is just an mget. It's saying, hey, let's get this stuff. And we're going to run an asterisk for a wildcard, which is going to grab every single thing here. So I'm going to go ahead and run that. And you can see now that we got two files out. We got this Joe Cakes to-do list complete initiation, and then we got a default password.txt. So I'm going to go ahead and just exit out of this. And then I'm going to cat the Joe Cakes to do complete initiation.txt in C. And it just says complete your company initiation to start writing to your portfolio. Okay, that's not really interesting to me. Let's go ahead and cat out the template, and we'll do default password.txt. See if it works. Template and then default password.txt. Okay, so we've got secret org here with an exclamation. This looks like a password. So let's go ahead and write this into a file. We'll just save this over in a notepad, save it for a rainy day. Now, we've got a password, but we don't really know what to do with the password. What can we do with it? Well, we know that there's users out there that exist, but what is the username format? So we can write a little script to kind of go through this and see what the username format might be. And when we're on live stream, I'll show you exactly how I ran this. I said, well, we've got Bend Over, so maybe the username is Ben, or maybe it's bdover, or maybe it's ben.dover, maybe it's bendover, or maybe it's just b.dover, right? And then we can do the same thing with Joe Cakes. We could say Joe, jcakes, joe.cakes, etc. I'm going to go ahead and just let this be. If you want to type it all the way out, you can. Just for the sake of this video, I'm going to keep it short. So let's just use these two users with this little syntax. I'm going to go ahead and add the Joe Cakes, and I'll add a j.cakes as well. But I would do the same for Kirby Curtis and Lee Frank all the way through. Now, I'm going to save this, and let's just save this as users.txt. We'll go ahead and do that. And then I'm going to go ahead and do something here. So my mind immediately goes to, well, if I have access as the user, maybe I can use something like psexec, which might get us a shell on this machine. But maybe not, because if this user doesn't have a write access to that machine, we can't write any sort of payload or anything malicious. So what other things can we do with a valid user credential? Well, maybe we can look up what's called an SID. So what is an SID? An SID is just a security identifier. And everybody's got an SID. And those SIDs identify you uniquely as to who you are. So as a domain has an SID. A user, they have an SID. A group, they have an SID. So we can look up SIDs, and there's actually a tool for that called lookupsid.py. Now, what I'm going to be using today is part of the Impacket Toolkit, which I don't actually think I have pulled up. But if you're interested in using the Impacket Toolkit, just go out to Google and just type in Impacket GitHub. I'm going to blow this up just a little bit. And the Secure Auth Corp right here for Impacket, fantastic resource. If you've never used this before, absolutely one of the best resources, one of the most used resources that I use in pen testing. And one of the reasons I like this box so much is this is actually a technique that I use when I'm doing a pen test. If I've got credentials, I can use those credentials to pull down information about an environment. Lookupsid.py works really well. So we can figure out what the lookupsid.py is, and we'll do a -- help really quick just to find out what we need. But what we're going to need is a domain, a username, and a password at the target name. Okay, so let's fill in what we know. We know the domain, which is actually secret.org, and you would have found that with a quick -a as well. And with secret, we could also do something like, we'll just do $user. We'll hold the variable. We don't know the username, right? But we do know the password. So let's go ahead and take that password that we found and paste it into here. I'm just going to do a quick copy and then paste. And we know the IP address, which is 172.31.2.1. So that's the syntax to run this, but let's write a quick little script to make this a little easier. So how about we say for user in, and we'll do a cat users.text. We'll say do, and then we actually need to do lookupsid.py with that syntax there. And then we're going to say done. Now, if I did save this to the appropriate directory, when I actually save this out, then yep, it should run through this. So what are we doing here? If you've never seen a basic for loop in Bash, we're saying, hey, every line that we have in this document here, go ahead and try this. So it's going to say, hey, Ben, go ahead and put Ben here on the first iteration. And then on the next iteration, go ahead and put B Dover. And then go through that every single time until you're done. That's all we're doing. So let's go ahead and enter on that. And you can see that it's trying to go through all these. And then one starts working. Okay, that's great. So one starts working means that we have valid credentials somewhere. Now, the easiest way for me to do this is just to count. So we could do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So the seventh down is what we got. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Tells us that jcakes is likely the user that we are looking at. We can confirm that by just deleting the loop and putting in the user of jcakes, deleting the do part of this, and trying this again to make sure that we can actually gain access. All right. So that is working. What are we getting with this SID, by the way? You can see, look, the SID is pulling down the domain SID. It's pulling down the actual RIDs here of the users. So 500 being an admin, we've got the Kerberos ticket granting ticket user. We've got different groups that we can see. We're actually enumerating here the users that are in this domain. And we can see we've got jcakes, L Frank, K Curtis, we've got B Dover, and we've got the the secret DC, which is actually the computer name or the host name, you can see the $sign. Why not copy that too? So I'm going to put these into a list that we know are good to go. So we'll say, well, we know JCake's password now, but we have L Frank, we've got K Curtis, we've got, we'll do the secret -DC $sign, and then we'll do beat over. And we'll save that as the new users. Now, my mind immediately went to something like Kerberoasting. So when we have valid domain accounts, the next thing to maybe perhaps privilege escalate here would be to do a Kerberoasting attack. Now, if you don't know about Kerberoasting, I've got videos on that on my channel that you can check out. Otherwise, you can check out the Udemy course as well. We cover how to do Kerberoasting attacks and how to build it in a lab. But for here, as for an example, I'm just going to go ahead and tell you it didn't work. Like, I wanted to see as a high level, I want to say, hey, any user that we have valid, which currently we have a JCakes user and we have that valid password, any valid user credentials we have can request a ticket granting service ticket if there's a service account. And we see that there's a service accounts group. So I thought immediately, I said, okay, well, service accounts group is there. Let's go ahead and see if there's a service user running maybe. And we'll go ahead and pull down that ticket granting service ticket. And if there is a service running and we pull down that hash uses the password of the service to actually encrypt it. So if the password of the service is weak, then we can pull down and crack that password. That is actually not the path here. Though Kerberoasting is a very common attack still to this day in Active Directory-based pen testing. So what do we do then? Well, if we think back to our original scan, we had this one port open. And this one port open was what? We had 5985. What is 5985? Well, 5985 is WinRM. And before I get ahead of myself on this, let me explain why. So say I want to connect on PSExec. Now, PSExec uses SMB to connect. It tries to find a writable share, and it tries to upload malware. If the malware is good to go, you're going to get a reverse shell if we don't get blocked by AV or anything else. So what you can do is you can say something. Actually, I'm just going to exchange this out because this works really well. You could say SMB or PSExec.py and try to run this. And you're going to see that it does connect to SMB and it requests the shares, but all the shares are not writable. Well, that's not the end of the world. It's not the end of the world because we actually have the 5985 open. We've got the WinRM port open. Now, what is WinRM? WinRM is the Windows remote management tool. Okay, so it allows for remote management in basic terms. So any server that is enabled with this, you can connect to it, and if you have credentials and permissions to use it, okay? So there is a tool that I love to use for this situation, and that tool is called Evil WinRM. So if you go to GitHub or you search GitHub Evil WinRM, you're going to find it. Easy download, easy install, very straightforward. So let's try to use this tool and see how we can do it. So with WinRM, if we just do a Evil WinRM here, and we do a --help, we can see the parameters that we need to set. We need an IP address, we need a user, and we need a password, okay? So pretty straightforward. We'll do Evil WinRM, IP of 172.31.2.1. We have a user of JCakes, and we don't have to supply the domain here, actually. We could do the password of whatever the password is. I'm just going to copy and paste that, and you're going to see how this works out. So let's go ahead and put this in quotations just to make sure the bang doesn't mess up anything. And look at that, we've got a shell. So now we can cd ... go cd into desktop, and we should see, if we do a dir, we should see our access.txt. Okay, and we see somebody else is in the box and messing around with the box, and that's okay. These boxes, we're not the only ones in them, but so what can we do here from this point forward? So we need to do some sort of privilege escalation because this user is not an admin user, right? We are JCakes. We're not system. We're not administrator. We need to do more enumeration. And To do that, there's a lot of steps that can be done in Windows privilege escalation. And actually, if you're interested in Windows privilege escalation, stay tuned in the next week or so, and you'll see that I've got a course coming out and all the details that's going to be released. So there's a new course coming out on Windows PrivEsc that'll walk you through a lot of these steps that you're going to see today. But what we want to do is we want to use a tool. Now, PowerUp is a very, very common tool that we can use, and PowerUp's going to go out there and it's going to look for all sorts of things, misconfigurations, any sort of passwords stored in files, or even passwords stored in like unattend.xml or in auto logon, etc. It's going to do hunting like that. It's going to look for like unquoted service paths, all your standard, typical, hey, maybe there's an exploit here, kernel exploits, etc. I'm going to actually use another tool. So PowerUp's one of them. It's great. Another tool that does very similar, and you just got to find the one that you like. Another one is called WinPeas. So if you never heard of WinPeas, it is privilege escalation, awesome script suite. So give it a go. If you've never used it, give it a go. I'm going to show you how it works right now. So I've gone ahead and just downloaded the .exe, and I've saved it out to this computer. And the nice thing about it is we can just say upload. We have an upload feature. We don't have to use certutil. We don't have to do any PowerShell tricks, nothing. Evil WinRM has an upload feature. So we can just say, okay, let's upload winpeas.exe. It's a lowercase. Maybe. It's in my downloads folder. That's why. So let's do a root downloads, and then we'll do winpeas.exe. Put that in there. And then let's just go ahead and give that a quick run, shall we? Okay, and now it's running. So this is going to take a little bit. It's going to run through. I'm going to try to watch it as it goes, and we're just going to kind of talk through it as it's going down. So the first thing it's going to do is it's going to pull down system information. It's going to see what kind of information it can find via the system. I'm going to scroll up just a little bit. So it's going to look through system information, which is important. User information, network information, all of that is super important to look through to see if you could find anything. And everything's color coordinated. So if it's red, it thinks it's misconfigured. Obviously, you have to do a check on that. So it's looking to see here if LAPS is enabled or installed. It's not installed. So no LAPS protection, no credential guard, cache logon count. So it's looking at these different things. Now, if we keep scrolling through and we look at what's here, look, it's looking for antivirus, it's looking for drives, all these things that back in the day when I was going through this, I didn't have for exams and stuff. We didn't have something this nice. It's really, really nice. It goes over the different token privileges, which are super nice too. But if you keep scrolling down just a little bit, look, it finds a default password. Look at this password. This is an auto logon credential. So this is stored here in clear text. I'm going to go ahead and just throw that in my little document here. And while this is running, guess what I'm going to go do instead? I'm going to go through and I'm going to give this another go. I'm going to just do a new tab. And I'm going to say another for loop for user in cat users.txt. We're going to go ahead and do something like psexec.py this time. And we're going to say secret with the domain. And then we're going to say $user. That user is going to have the password that we give it here. And we're going to go ahead and now put that at 172.31.2.1. Now, hopefully this makes sense. This is just a repeat of what we're doing. Remember, I edited the users to include what we found when we actually enumerated those SIDs. So we're going to run through these 4 users and see maybe this password works and we get lucky and we get a shell. So let's go ahead and just dump this. Would be really useful if I added the done to the loop. Let's give that a go. And look at that. The last one worked. So good old bend over there. If you see who am I, we actually have an authority system shell now. Awesome. So Mr. Bend over was our root user here, or at least our admin privileges to write to this. So we've owned this machine. And we've owned this machine using cool tools on Windows Server 2019. I really actually enjoyed this because we got credentials. We dumped credentials out of a share, which is, it's common. You're not likely going to get credentials on a pen test or open share just like that. But if you do land on a box and you start pulling credentials out of shares, which I've done before, maybe you can utilize those elsewhere. And we were able to use WinRM to connect to a machine. We use a enumeration tool like WinPeas, or you could use PowerUp or SharpUp or Seatbelt or Watson, or there's a million of them, right? You can use all these different tools out there, but WinPeas is great. We did it. We enumerated. We found the credential that was stored in clear text. We passed that around again, or did a quick brute force on PSExec, and we were able to find the user that this password worked for. So that is it. If you enjoyed this lesson, again, please do consider hitting the like button, subscribe, do comment down below. And if you want to watch these sorts of things live, where I go through this without any preparation or anything else, do check out the Twitch. Again, twitch.tv/thecybermentor. All links are posted below, as always. And again, thank you for donating. If you did donate to LLS, thanks for stopping by the charity stream. We had, I think it was well over 10,000 people drop by in one day, which is insane. So thank you so much. And until next time, my name is the Cyber Mentor, and I do thank you for joining me.